Sex ed, developmental disabilities.
If you've watched the Netflix show Sex Education, you probably have an idea of what that means. A more formal definition would be the instruction of topics relating to human sexuality. In the United States, only 27 of the 50 states actually require their public schools to teach their students sex education and HIV. That means 21 states don't require their students to learn about sex education and HIV.
If sex ed is being taught in public schools, why are we talking about this? The real reason is that sexual education is often generalized. This is a reason why we created this project. Oftentimes, sexual education is not applicable for those with developmental disabilities, in this case, intellectual disabilities. Therefore, it is imperative to raise awareness and change the stigma that those with developmental disabilities do not engage in sexual activities.
The term disability is so broad that it is broken down into smaller sections. For this presentation, we will be focusing on developmental disabilities. So what is a developmental disability? It is one that is characterized as a set of conditions in which there is an impairment in either behavior, learning, language, or physical areas. It is important to note that individuals are usually born with their developmental disability.
As mentioned previously, we will be focusing on intellectual disabilities. Intellectual disability refers to the sub-average intellectual functioning with onset prior to age 18 of an individual. Oftentimes, the level of severity of ID or intellectual disabilities is measured by the amount of assistance needed by the individual.
So how does society, sex, and disability all tie in together? Well, society has developed a stigma around people with disabilities and their sexual needs. In fact, some people assume that disabled individuals have no sexual desires, and some people find it very hard to imagine disabled individuals engaging in sexual activities. Well, this is far from the truth. Research has shown that individuals with intellectual disabilities still engage in masturbation, and although the occurrence of sexual activity is low, it still happens.
Why is sexual activity low among the ID community? Contrary to popular belief, those with ID engage in sexual activities. However, sexual activity is low, and a possible reason to this is the fact that some might not be able to consent to sexual activity. However, it is important to note that some individuals are able to consent, and oftentimes those that can have severe cognitive disabilities.
It is extremely important that those with intellectual disabilities are given the opportunity to be aware and familiar with things such as sexual education. With the lack of knowledge provided, an increase in sexual abuse or assault has occurred. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, reports show that 83% of women with ID have experienced some sort of sexual assault, while unfortunately only 3% of those cases were reported. There are many things we can do to help. It starts with the simple action of teaching and involving those with intellectual disabilities to learn about their bodies and what it is sexually capable of. Sex is such a normal thing, for those without disabilities and for others with. One thing we all have in common is that we have our desires. People with ID should not be excluded and should have the opportunity to experience sexual activities if given the proper knowledge.
Yeah, I think they do.
Probably, yeah. If it depends, I guess. Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No.
You might ask, why is this important to Texas A&M students? Well, this is important to Texas A&M students because 11.7% of students at Texas A&M University are in a health-related major. 11.7% also equates to about 7,000 students. In today's society, most health professionals are not equipped with adequate knowledge about how intellectually disabled people can have healthy and fulfilling sex lives as well. Therefore, it is crucial that students in health majors are informed, because once they are aware and have enough knowledge regarding the topic, they can take it with them and pass it on. Students that are not in the 11.7%, however, might also take away some good information from this topic, for this information is important. Sex ed should be taught to all people about all people.
Uh, I don't know. I think it's up to their own decision. Like, I don't really think anyone else can tell them if they're able to consent. So if anything, they should be the person to consent.
It depends on the extent of their mental capabilities. So like, I don't know, if they're like, if they can make decisions and live on their own and make decisions for themselves, then they're more than capable of consenting.
Intellectual, disability. Some people consider like, I don't know, ADHD something small like that. So it depends. As long as they're able to know what they're doing and say yes to it, then it's consent.
If they verbally consent.
I believe that a lot of the time people can gauge the mental age of someone. So I guess if their mental age matches the age of consent, then they would be able to.
I believe all our experiences are shaped based on like our previous knowledge and experience in the background. So I believe that consent, or for someone to be able to engage in a sexual activity with a mental illness, it would depend on their knowledge on what they're trying to experiment with.
I think it depends on whether they have knowledge on what sexual intercourse is exactly.
#SexEd for all.